is around us. They have turned out all the lights.
When troops are trapped, they call for close air support, the ultimate backup in modern warfare.
You got this guy who's like, I'm dying. I need your help now.
Fighters, bombers, and attack aircraft. An array of air power with a common goal: protect ground troops with precision firepower.
And we all felt the responsibility to each other as a crew, but then the loyalty and the responsibility to the ground forces to get that mission done.
In hotspots worldwide, these planes save lives and win wars. They are the guardian angels of American ground troops. June 2012, Eastern Afghanistan. Two A-10 Thunderbolts go on patrol in the War on Terror.
We provided pretty much 24-hour coverage with the A-10, where we had airplanes airborne just about all hours of the day and night.
Lieutenant Colonel Paul Zerkowski was there as an A-10 squadron commander. Just after takeoff, Zerkowski and his wingman get an urgent call.
We were re-rolled to what is called a troops in contact. That meant somebody on the ground was taking fire, and they were requesting support.
A 90-member special ops team is surrounded deep in Taliban territory.
They were working up a spine or a ridge line between two rivers to a helicopter landing zone where they had planned to be picked up. They were complete with their mission. They just needed to get up the spine and get on a helicopter to go home.
The team has been ambushed just 2 miles from their pickup point. Now, 90 men are trapped, enmeshed in a firefight.
At that point, there's so much gunfire on the ground, they can't even bring the helicopters in yet.
When ground troops need backup, they call for close air support. It's a high-risk military tactic, where aircraft attack enemies dangerously close to U.S. troops. And the A-10 Thunderbolt is a go-to jet on these dangerous missions. The single-seat attack aircraft is designed to fly low and hit hard. The jet is best known for being tough and ugly.
What we got here is the A-10 Thunderbolt II, more commonly known as the Warthog, or just the Hog by those who fly it.
The Warthog is basically a gun with wings.
The A-10 gun is called the GAU-8 Avenger, or just the gun by A-10 pilots. It's 21 feet long. It's the heaviest gun, automatic cannon mounted on aircraft. It weighs more than 4,000 pounds when it's fully loaded.
The Avenger's magazine holds 1,000 rounds of 30mm ammunition that fires 70 rounds per second.
It's effective enough to kill armored vehicles, tanks, armored personnel carriers, all the way down to small, soft point targets. We can use it against moving targets, we can use it against static targets, we can use it against buildings. Pretty much everything that a really powerful gun can be used for, we use it against.
The gun is both powerful and precise. 4,000 feet above the ground, the Warthog can strike within 40 feet of its target.
You can be assured that anything within that 40 feet is not going to have a good day.
The A-10's 30mm cannon is only part of its payload package.
The A-10 can carry a mix of ordnance. Pretty much anything the Air Force produces, we can hang on the bottom of this jet and use in our close air support mission. The outer pylons are reserved for lighter ordnance, specifically air-to-air missiles. As you move inboard, we mount sensors, flares, and some rockets out on the outer pylons. As we move in towards the center of the plane, we can carry heavier ordnance, so air-to-surface precision-guided missiles. And the bombs are most commonly loaded on the inboard station. This right here is known as a triple ejector rack. So the TUR can carry 3 bombs, 500-pound each. It can also put rocket pods with 7 rockets each on these stations. So you can picture the variety and number of ordnance that the A-10 can carry into the battlefield environment.
For generations of soldiers, the A-10 and its pilots have been lifesavers.
If I do my job correctly, more American men and women are coming home safely at the end of the day.
In Afghanistan, A-10 pilot Paul Zerkowski and his wingman raced to troops under attack.
There were 90 guys on the ground that were threatened by enemy fire, and it was an imperative that we get in there and help them. At that point, we just pushed it up and got there as quick as we could.
Above the A-10s, high-altitude aircraft also rush in to assist.
When we first arrived, we had other assets on station that were supporting the mission. There was a AC-130, an MC-12, and then there was a B-1 that was above him.
Then, something totally unexpected. Severe weather.
There was a pretty good cell or rainstorm that was developing. The enemies tactically used this to their advantage, so they had waited for the weather to roll into the valley before they started to shoot.
As the storm brews, the planes have to descend dangerously close to mountain peaks. For the high flyers, it's just too risky.
At that point, there wasn't enough room underneath the weather where they could operate safely. They, one by one, started to check out because they couldn't provide any support.
Only 2 planes remain, the A-10s.
We had the capability to work in poor weather. We had the capability to work at low altitude and provide fire support to the guys on the ground when they need it.
The Warthog is rugged, but these conditions push it to its limit.
Operating in that rainstorm was very challenging. When it starts raining, you can't see as far in front of you, and your sensors can't see through the weather either.
Zerkowski can't get a position on ground troops, so he can't risk firing. The pilots turn to their radio communications.
Close air support missions start with detailed integration between aircraft and ground troops. In order for us to do that, we need to be able to talk to them. So my tools are 3 radios that I have by my left hip here that allow me to talk to and coordinate with pretty much everyone.
Warthog pilots can tap into 3 different radio networks. The first allows them to speak with the troops on the ground. The second is dedicated to other aircraft. The A-10's 3rd radio network connects it with JTAC, or the Joint Terminal Attack Controller. That's an officer on the ground who oversees the entire offensive operation.
The radios are crucial to the execution of close air support so that we can understand, we can integrate, and we can adjust to dynamic battlefield environments.
Over Afghanistan, A-10 pilots radio troops getting hammered by the Taliban.
The troops on the ground said they were taking fire, and they were taking fire from the north and from the west.
In the sky, a thunderstorm rattles the Warthogs. The pilots can't see the soldiers amid the clouds and terrain.
It's very difficult to see the actual personnel in the kind of rocky terrain. And they're all wearing camouflage and they blend in pretty well.
Soldiers are now wounded and increasingly desperate.
It was critical we provide support, or it was likely that they would be overrun, and there were 90 lives at stake on the ground there.
If the pilots don't come up with a plan soon, dozens of men could die. In eastern Afghanistan, 2 A-10s struggled to find ground troops in a driving rainstorm. Taliban fighters surround the soldiers.
So at this point, it is starting to rain a little harder, and my confidence level in the target wasn't as high as I wanted it to be.
Visibility is almost 0. And pilot Paul Zerkowski won't risk firing on his own men. he radios down a bold plan.
I elected on my first pass to put down a white phosphorus rocket. The rocket that hits and it produces a big cloud of smoke, and it's a great reference point on the ground.
The rocket works. Now, soldiers can help Zurkowski find the enemy.
They corrected off of the rocket on the ground as a reference, requested 30 millimeter just north of the rocket impact.
Zurkowski has his target and aims his Gatling gun.
I came around for a second pass. I put about 300 rounds on the ridgeline just north of the rocket.
Massive bullets rip through the storm, pummeling the Taliban.
In that type of weather, you can see a disturbance in the air of where the bullets are. So you can't actually see the bullets, but you can see kind of a wave in the air of disturbance of where this mass of metal's going downrange.
Zurkowski repeatedly calls ground troops to see if they're safe. Finally, his radio crackles. He's destroyed the enemy and saved 90 soldiers.
On the last pass, they were confirmed that, yeah, just hit your last impact. That was effective.
Two rescue helicopters finally land.
It was a very successful mission. We got everybody out that day. There were 90 people on the ground. It really highlighted the capabilities of the A-10 in terms of being able to operate underneath the weather, being able to provide accurate pinpoint fires to support the guys on the ground.
November 2001. Ground troops in Afghanistan face a very different threat.
You see that?
Yes, just
A
left of it.
fast-moving force. Soldiers can't tell if a truck below is friend or foe. They need more than muscle in the sky.
We have enemy QRF approaching.
They need high-tech close air support. Enter the powerful and versatile AC-130 gunship. The AC stands for Attack Cargo.
Behind me is the AC-130 gunship. It's the Air Force's premier close air support platform.
To create this gunship, the military turned one of its biggest cargo planes into an attack aircraft. On board, it's packed with firepower.
And its mass gross payload of 155,000 pounds allows us to carry more weapons, crew, and ammunition than any of the rotary wing gunships.
No other gunship can put more rounds on the ground.
So the guns are obviously what make the gunship the gunship. We have 3 side-firing weapons. We can shoot 2 of them at the same time, either at the same target or at separate targets.
Toward the front of the plane is the 25mm Gatling gun.
This is the 25mm GAU-12 Gatling gun. We call it the crowd pleaser. From the 350-round burst, it's just 12 seconds of a fireball coming out the side of the aircraft. It's pretty impressive.
Behind it is a weapon that's been in service since World War II, the 40mm Bofors cannon.
We can fire up to 100 rounds a minute. This is our most accurate weapon. Because of its low collateral damage, it's the one we get to fire the most in combat.
The gunship also has the 105, a literal cannon in the sky.
This is the 105mm howitzer. This is the biggest gun we have on the gunship. Its firepower is unmatched by any other airframe.
This massive cannon can fire about 10 rounds per minute. It recoils with enough force to bench press over 20,000 pounds.
We can put these on vehicles, hardened targets, buildings, any kind of structure that we need penetrated.
The AC-130 is hell in the sky for its enemies. But for U.S. troops, it's an angel of mercy.
Primary mission of the AC-130 gunship is to support the guys on the ground, keep them safe, and make sure they are able to come home after their mission.
Over Afghanistan, an AC-130 crew spots something suspicious. A truck is a mile away from ground forces and heading straight towards them.
You see see that?
Yes, just west of it.
It's on the west side.
Lieutenant Colonel Allison Black served as the plane's navigator.
I'm relaying what's going on to the friendly forces. If we get a detail wrong, because we didn't hear it correctly, it could lead to disaster.
She warns ground troops about the suspicious truck.
This is what we're seeing. What do you think? Is it good? Is it bad? Are these your guys, or is this Taliban?
We have enemy QRF approaching 30.
They replied copy and cleared us to shoot that vehicle.
Clear to engage the moving vehicle.
Yeah, I don't hear him either.
Black's pilot rolls the plane into position, and the crew aims their weapons at the truck. Then, abruptly, the truck stops at a building. New men surround it. The aircrew stops cold. These could be allies.
ETA, we've got people walking out of the building right now. Roger that. We're going as fast.
Multiple people were moving around, and we took the time trying to understand what was going on there. Are they good? Are they bad?
Copy. Not clear to fire until we have your permission.
Suddenly, ground troops urgently call Black.
They came back on the radio, said, those are confirmed Taliban, you're cleared hot.
The men swarming around the truck are all Taliban. The AC-130 crew rushes to bring their guns online. The gunship unleashes 40mm and 105mm rounds on the truck and the enemy. But the situation goes from bad to worse.
When we started the engagement, hundreds of people poured out of the building. It was a complete surprise to us. It wasn't just 5 or 10, hundreds.
The gunship strike has revealed this is a Taliban safe house. Now, ground troops face more than 200 enemy fighters.
Because they had the ability to close that distance with our guys on the hillside, we wanted to take them all out if we could. We absolutely understood that if we couldn't accomplish that, that they could pursue our guys.
The AC-130 crew goes into overdrive.
We're all laser focused, and we all felt the responsibility to each other as a crew, but then the loyalty and the responsibility to the ground forces to get that mission done.
Grounds are away.
Clear to fire.
Black's gunship destroys the safe house and 200 enemies, allowing U.S. forces to escape. 4 hours later, low on fuel and ammo, the aircraft turns back to base. Its crew protected their men and pushed back the Taliban.
Who knows how many lives we saved on the Northern Alliance side and our American side. There's no doubt in my mind that many Americans have been able to come home to their families because of gunships. There's nothing that comes close to the gunship. She's irreplaceable.
The AC-130 saved troops in 2001. It also has their backs 15 years later as the war in Afghanistan marches on. November 2016, northern Afghanistan. An AC-130 rushes to support U.S. Special Forces. Their mission? Attack a Taliban stronghold in a packed village.
Basically, we wanted to root out the embedded Taliban force inside the village itself.
Major Aaron Hall was the gunship's fire control officer.
The Special Forces team, along with the partner force, we're going to move in an attempt to capture these folks and get as much information as they could.
On the ground, Green Berets and Afghan commandos move in after dark. Even with night vision, they have limited visibility. That's where the AC-130 comes in. The gunship is uniquely equipped to be a spy in the sky. It has a crew of 13 synchronizing support for ground troops. The cockpit holds 2 pilots and a flight engineer, who monitors the aircraft's systems. Behind the cockpit, the heart of the gunship called the booth. 5 crew members share this space.
We have our 2 sensor operators sitting up behind me. The fire control officer sits here, and the navigator sits next to him. And then in the back, we have the electronic warfare officer as well.
The sensor operators scan the ground for threats and pass this info to the navigator, who validates the target. The fire control officer selects the right weapons for the job. The 5th crew member, the electronic warfare officer, monitors the ground for threats. If the front of the aircraft is its brains, the back is its brawn. 3 gunners load up weapons. 2 more crew members look for threats through scanner bubbles on the right and rear of the plane. Once the weapons are armed, the sensor operators fire.
What really makes the gunship is the well-orchestrated symphony that happens inside the aircraft to be able to put those rounds down on the ground, close to the friendlies when they need it.
Over Afghanistan, Major Aaron Hall and his AC-130 crew protect ground troops by hunting for Taliban fighters.
We were overhead, scanning around their position, making sure that there were no enemies coming in on their locations.
Let me know when you see the target area and I'll start the talk on.
This was a large village area, so multiple structures, pretty dense group of buildings.
Tracking. I got the square building,
Roger
the rectangle building to the northwest.
We have a square building and a rectangle building to the northwest.
A special ops team creeps through the village, certain the enemy is watching them.
The assumption is the Taliban probably had some other folks, the rest of the village, spotting for them as well.
Let's go. Roll it in.
The ground team approaches a gated compound where insurgents may be lurking. High above them, the air crew spots something. Movement in the compound.
They seemed to be pretty suspicious. It did appear that they knew that the friendly force was moving in their direction.
The air crew scrambles to warn the soldiers.
People running to the west. Copy.
But it's too late. A Taliban fighter lobs a grenade over the gate, directly at U.S. troops.
That's when all hell broke loose. As soon as we saw the explosion, that's when it was game on.
Get up, man, get up.
It's an ambush. Taliban fighters pour out.
The friendly force were surrounded on 3 sides. They were trapped and there was no place they could go.
Worse, 4 soldiers have been hit. Men on the ground are dying. Their only hope for survival is the crew of the AC-130. Over Afghanistan, Major Aaron Hall and his AC-130 crew prepare for battle. Below them, Taliban fighters pummel U.S. Special Forces.
The odds were definitely in the enemy's favor. There was a significant, overwhelming force.
As the fire control officer, it's Hall's job to select the weapons.
I immediately brought up 2 guns, and we moved into engaging.
He'll use everything he's got. The Gatling gun, the Bofors cannon, and the 105mm howitzer. Hall's sensor operators target the enemy.
Moving.
Get back on those guys. There we go.
And unleash their weapons.
Yeah.
We began firing anything within 50, 60 meters, hitting any of the structures where we were seeing small arms fire. We knew that we were being effective because the Special Forces team was getting a little bit of relief and able to make some ground headway, basically moving back to the north.
The gunfire buys the ground troops precious time. They can take cover. But the Taliban is relentless.
They just kept coming, and as soon as you destroy or neutralize one target, another one would fill a spot.
Then, yet another threat. Hall's crew spots more insurgents coming from a different direction.
At this point, we picked up an enemy sneaking around on that friendly force. It certainly seemed like some type of coordinated attack, just the way that they were moving in for the ambush.
The new enemies are 40 feet from U.S. troops, and the AC-130 has a problem. The crew is down to just one kind of ammo, 105 proximity rounds, usually deemed too risky to use near friendly forces.
It's going to explode just above the ground, and it's going to basically be like a shotgun. It's going to spread fragmentation in a large, wide area.
It's up to Hall to hit the enemy without harming his own men. His calculations must be perfect.
I knew that it's what we had to do, but I was just praying. If one thing was off, we definitely hit the friendly force that we were trying to protect.
The odds are against Hall.
You're cleared on the big square building. Go ahead and level it.
Enemy fighters are now 30 feet from ground troops, half of whom are critically wounded. Hall takes careful aim and fires. A 35-pound explosive shell careens toward the Taliban force.
You're holding your breath the entire time, just hoping that everything you've done has been right. And as soon as the round went off, the enemy element dropped.
The explosion is so violent, it knocks U.S. soldiers off their feet. But they're unharmed. The enemy, however, is wiped out.
If the AC-130 wasn't there that night, there's no doubt that those casualty numbers would have been significantly higher.
With unmatched precision and firepower, the AC-130 saves 50 men. It was custom built for close air support. Not all planes are. Some have to adapt by any means necessary. March 2003, northwestern Iraq. Two Air Force F-16 fighters patrol at 10,000 feet.
Our mission that night was searching for Scud missiles in Iraq.
Lieutenant Colonel Edward Lynch was one of the pilots.
You're going on 6 to 8 hour missions, just looking around at things on the ground. It's like, are we ever going to see any action?
The U.S. and its allies have been at war with Saddam Hussein for 10 days.
The dictator of Iraq is not disarming. To the contrary, he is deceiving.
America accuses Hussein of stockpiling weapons of mass destruction. U.S. bombers launch a massive air campaign called Shock and Awe. But ground troops face a powerful Iraqi resistance.
And we have a number of areas throughout the country that are not yet stabilized.
Coalition troops count on air support from fighters like the F-16. With missiles, rockets, bombs, and a 20-millimeter cannon, it can annihilate the enemy. F-16 fighter pilot Edward Lynch is patrolling with his wingman when they learn nearby troops are outnumbered 10 to 1.
And all of a sudden, the radios came alive, directing us to some coordinates that were north of us. They wanted us there fast, so I put the coordinates in, pushed up the power, and we flew as fast as we could.
The F-16 wasn't built for close air support, but it's the closest jet to the crisis. Down below, 500 Iraqi fighters surround 52 British Special Ops soldiers.
When we got overhead their position, we heard them on the radio.
It's too right. We have got them totally around it.
And you got this guy who's like, I'm dying. I need your help now.
The enemy now is around us. They are help, okay?
Special ops guys are the guys with tattoos and daggers on their legs, and they don't call for help like that unless it's really bad.
Ground troops are getting close air support from the supersonic F-16, a jet originally designed for dogfighting.
Close air support typically was not our bread and butter. But the F-16 has proven that it has the ability to do so in all aspects of close air support.
The fighter debuted in the 1970s, built for air-to-air combat.
The plane behind me is the F-16 Fighting Falcon that we commonly refer to as the Viper. The striking snake-like features of a Viper snake are pretty appropriate to this aircraft.
Over the years, it emerged as a great multi-role fighter, able to take out targets in the air and on the ground. Today, it's one of the most popular aircraft in the military, lightweight and agile.
More often than not, it's not just a straight line that we're flying. We'll use the vertical, doing loops and split S's to try and defend ourselves and hopefully win the engagement and get back home safely.
Over Iraq, F-16 pilot Edward Lynch and his wingman raced to help British soldiers.
They have turned out all the lights. We need your help, okay?
Iraqis outnumber British troops 10-1. Lynch is armed and ready. But in the darkness, he can't see the men he's trying to protect. He has to see them to safely shoot.
Bring your strobe on now. Strobe on now. We're wearing night vision goggles which require illumination from some light source. And there was no illumination because there was no moon, there was no stars, and there's nothing on the ground visible. So I wasn't going to be able to visually acquire them long enough in order to drop a bomb.
The strobes aren't enough. Lynch can't get a visual, so he can't risk firing.
Honcho 2-3, I have no strobe, I have no strobe. I can't help you if I can't see you.
The men below are on their own.
You're now on foot! You're now on foot!
It's frustrating because if you don't do something, they're going to die. And so you've got to come up with your own tactics.
Lynch is flying a state-of-the-art war machine that's armed to the teeth. And right now, every weapon he's got is useless. F-16 pilot Edward Lynch flies over Iraq, desperate to help troops, outnumbered 10-1.
We have got them totally around it!
The enemy is on to Lynch and his F-16 too, aiming anti-aircraft artillery and surface-to-air missiles directly at him.
I need to keep my speed up in case I need to react to a SAM missile or AAA. My primary emphasis was being able to maneuver from any air-to-ground threat that might be coming my way.
Lynch can't see his 52 men, so he won't fire. He could kill the people he's trying to protect. Then Lynch has an idea. He goes into a steep dive with a plan brewing in his head. The F-16 has a powerful single F-110 GE engine. When its afterburners are engaged, the engine can create a sonic boom.
When you go into afterburner, it makes like an exploding kind of sound.
That sonic boom can be mistaken for a bomb or a missile.
It makes noise. I mean, the noise increase is tremendous. 2 F-16s in afterburner at 3,000 or 4,000 feet above the ground will scare a lot of people.
Over Iraq, Lynch prepares to strike the enemy with a sonic boom.
I was hoping the Iraqis would think it is a weapon coming down, and then that would allow a chance for the troops to escape.
It's bold, but dangerous. Lynch has to nosedive, break the sound barrier, then pull up aggressively. One mistake, and he's dead.
We're over 500 miles an hour. There's not a lot of room for error, but in a situation like this, you have to just take everything in your 20 years of flying and put it into this one attack.
The F-16 is one of the few jets agile enough to execute this plan. But it's up to Lynch to pull it off. He takes a breath and dives. Just 3,000 feet from the ground, Lynch muscles up, a sonic boom exploding behind him. The ruse works. The enemy flees. But before Lynch can call his men, a new problem. An alarm pierces his cockpit. The Iraqis have launched a missile, and it's headed straight for him.
Now, it's time for me to worry about my own self to survive. Right now, I have to react.
Lynch hurls his plane into evasive moves, fighting for his life.
I'm in full afterburner, so I'm making a heck of a lot of racket. And now I'm accelerating extremely fast and pulling up my nose and hope that the missile will overshoot.
Finally, the alarm stops. Lynch's moves and the jet's agility have saved him. His next concern, the troops. He calls down, praying for good news. And he gets it.
The sound of those engines and afterburner allowed the special ops troops to escape.
The enemy has scattered, and the Allied troops are safe.
It was an emotional moment that I'd been part of something to help.
Lynch credits the F-16 with saving the soldiers' lives and his own.
The maneuverability of the F-16 allows you to have a safe escape. I knew I had that capability in the F-16 to avoid a AAA, a SAM attack, or the ground.
On close air support missions, pilots have to adjust their tactics and their planes for whatever comes their way. Soldiers' lives depend on it. 2001, Central Afghanistan. A Taliban convoy is closing in on ground troops. 12 enemy vehicles packed with weapons. The closest plane is a hulking B-52 Stratofortress. Problem is, this aircraft wasn't meant to take out moving targets. Instead, the massive B-52 was designed as a long-range heavy bomber, intended to carry nuclear weapons. In central Afghanistan, it's called on for a different role: close air support.
Close air support is time-sensitive and it's reactive.
Colonel Joseph Jones was a B-52 radar navigator in the War on Terror.
The environment always stays dynamic. The troops are moving, the enemy is moving, or your target is moving.
Jones's B-52 gets a distress call.
A 12-vehicle Taliban convoy had targeted 35 friendly troops. They had bracketed our friendly forces on the ground, and without immediate attack, they were in danger of casualty.
The B-52 is lethal, but this kind of mission is totally new.
We never had prepared to strike a moving target ever. This was a serious heads-up ball game that we were playing.
To save ground troops, the B-52 crew has to adapt fast. The bomber is a legend among aircraft. Over the last 50 years, it's led every major U.S. bombing campaign.
So this is the B-52H Stratofortress. Here in the community, we call it the BUF, which stands for Big Ugly Fat Fellow, although that acronym is open to interpretation.
The B-52 is massive, 156 feet long and 40 feet tall. One wing alone measures 4,000 square feet. It's one of the military's largest bombers, able to outlast most close air support planes. And its weapons inventory is mind-blowing.
The B-52's greatest strength has always been its ordnance capability. It's been designed to carry really any type of weapon in the Air Force inventory.
The bomber is built to carry weapons across its airframe. Each wing can hold up to 9 weapons, like missiles, mines, or smart and laser-guided bombs. Inside, there's room for 27 additional bombs, plus 8 nuclear cruise missiles. The plane's size allows for multiple weapons configurations. Overall, the B-52 can carry 70,000 pounds of weapons, more than any other Air Force plane.
It would take fighters multiple times to do what we can do in one pass.
Over Afghanistan, Colonel Joseph Jones and his B-52 crew chased down a Taliban convoy. 12 trucks are rapidly closing in on U.S. soldiers.
We were acutely aware on our crew that if we weren't able to react accurately and quickly, that there was going to be friendly casualties.
Trouble is, the B-52 has never taken out a moving target. If the crew miscalculates, they could kill their own men.
You have to deliver weapons in close proximity to friendly forces. You could endanger your own forces if not delivered accurately and precisely.
Jones has one chance to drop bombs and save American lives, and he has to do it from 38,000 feet. Over Afghanistan, a B-52 flies high above a fast-moving Taliban convoy. Colonel Joseph Jones and his crew have never had to hit a moving target until now.
We had to predict where that convoy was going to be 48 to 53 seconds after the release from the airplane to hit a target that was going to move almost a mile after we had released our weapons.
Jones will drop 27 gravity bombs, enough explosives to do a mile's worth of damage.
We were going to come in from behind the convoy, lay a string of weapons down along the convoy line.
Jones and his crew sweat the details, triple-checking calculations. Then they release all 27 bombs. The explosion is so violent, the crew can no longer see or hear their own men.
We made several calls and got no call back. There was an immediate concern that there may have been a friendly fire incident with which we were the guilty parties. Then all of a sudden the ground guy comes on and there is hooting and hollering in the background and laughing. And this guy goes, well, this war's over. You just destroyed that entire convoy en masse.
The first-time tactic worked, saving dozens of lives on the ground.
It modified the way we think about that airplane as a close air support vehicle.
The bomber becomes a key support plane in Afghanistan.
The B-52 is just waiting for the next operation, and that next operation is just around the corner.
Close air support missions demand innovation and imagination. And one aircraft has both, the Harrier jump jet. 2008, southern Afghanistan. In the dead of night, 2 of the Royal Navy's Harrier jump jets prepare for takeoff. Nearby, British troops suspect Taliban fighters are plotting an ambush. The soldiers need eyes and weapons overhead. The Harrier is an attack aircraft best known for its vertical takeoff and landing capability. But the jet has another standout feature: high-tech night vision.
We had to make sure that friendly forces were protected, and that's why we were 24 hours a day, day and night.
Lieutenant Commander Chris Ward was a Harrier pilot with the Royal Navy. He circles British ground troops.
The patrol clearly knew something was up ahead, but they didn't know what. They needed us to be able to establish exactly what the threat was to them.
With his high-tech Harrier, Ward can scan the area. His tools include night vision goggles and a forward-looking infrared system. He soon sees the British soldiers are exactly right.
There were several people moving around, all focusing their attention out to the west, which was where the friendly forces patrol was static at this time. From our position, it's very clear that the coalition forces are about to walk straight into an ambush.
The Harrier is well equipped for a fight. "23,000 pounds of thrust allow the jet to hover like a helicopter or blast forward at near supersonic speeds.
On my first flight, my instructor told me it was going to be like riding a dragon. He definitely was telling the truth.
But with 13,000 pounds of weapons, Harrier pilots can hold their own.
The Harrier is capable of carrying a wide variety of weapons, everything from air-to-air missiles, like the AIM-9 Sidewinder, both precision-guided and conventional bombs, as well as a 25-millimeter guns capable of shooting up to 3,600 rounds per minute. When we get there, we need to be ready to hit hard and accomplish our mission.
In Afghanistan, Royal Navy pilot Chris Ward spots British troops in trouble. Taliban fighters are 1,500 feet away, likely preparing an ambush. With soldiers so close to the enemy, there's no room for error. The pilots rely on the Harrier's nighttime capabilities.
The Harrier is one of the most capable night platforms in the world. I can't go into specifics on the exact resolutions of what we can see at night, but suffice it to say that you can see very clearly people moving from 20,000 feet 5 miles away.
Ward and his wingman plan a swift and cooperative attack.
We were prepared and we were ready to drop, and we'd discussed the angle of attack that we were going to do.
But there's a catch. The enemy has to fire at British forces first.
At that point, they haven't been fired on. Well, we can't drop stores until they've actually been fired on, because there is no threat to them or direct threat of life at that stage. That would be an offensive drop, which would be against the rules of engagement.
All the pilots can do is circle and wait. The Taliban finally makes its move.
The enemy forces opened up on them. Small arms fire, heavy machine gun fire, and RPGs, which was classic small arms munitions, man-carryable munitions that the enemy forces had.
Ward and his wingman take aim at a dozen enemies on the ground.
My wingman calls in hot, and then I hear a tone. And at that point, I know that the bomb has left his aircraft.
They drop a 500-pound bomb on the Taliban. It's a direct hit.
At that point, we relayed to the friendlies that the enemy forces had been destroyed and that we couldn't see any further movement. And you can hear the relief in the ground troops' voice when they respond on the radio.
In Afghanistan, British Harriers clock more than 22,000 flying hours, many of them at night.
Without the night capabilities on the Harrier, in particular the sniper pod and the night vision goggles, it would have been impossible to conduct that mission.
From night attacks to daytime strikes, close air support planes get the job done.
The 810 is consistently asked for by the ground troops. When they're in trouble and they need support from the air, the 810 can provide it quickly and accurately.
These planes dive into firefights and hunt down the enemy.
AC-130 is awesome. There's no better close air support aircraft out there. It's the workhorse of the battlefield.
They blast targets and outsmart them.
The gunship took very good care of me. She's designed for the right fight. She is good at protecting the ground forces. That's what she's designed for. That's what she'll always be for.
Fearless, ruthless, and fast. These are the ultimate saviors for today's soldiers.